Colston Loveland, Tyler Booker, and Jihad Campbell. We've got some exciting NFL draft prospects to break down for you today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins, and we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much.
Joe, happy Wednesday to you. Happy snow day to those of us in the mid-Atlantic that got some snow delivered overnight. About 4 inches here.
Oh, nice. You could build a snowman.
We shut down the schools. We did all this stuff.
Wow.
But
so you got kids at home today? I didn't even know that.
Kids went to the home sitter.
Okay, very good. Very good.
Who, like our daughter, when she was younger, went there, and then she obviously goes to school now, and our son goes there. But I got out this morning and I had like that latest back in my day grumpy old man thing. I'm like, if the roads look like this, it was 7:35. Like the roads look like this when I was your age. We went to school.
Yeah, you were that guy, huh?
Yeah, I said it out loud to my daughter. I said, "Man, how the mighty have fallen as I've become that person." But I couldn't believe it. I was like, the roads are great. They canceled before the snow even started falling.
Wow.
Last night.
Yeah, you know how it is in Charlotte, man. We get a thought of snow. If it's below 30, they might have a 2-hour delay.
Cold. Too cold.
Yeah, too cold. But
well, a couple of NFL draft prospects on tap for us. From Jihad Campbell, linebacker, Alabama, defensive weapon in some cases, Alabama. Tyler Booker, who got some buzz over the course of the last couple weeks based off of Daniel Jeremiah and where he slotted him in his mock draft as a top 10 player. I think he went to Chicago in DJ's mock a couple weeks ago. And then Colston Loveland, a pass catcher, and I use that phrase very deliberately, from the University of Michigan. That's the three guys we're looking at here today on the show. Starting with Colston Loveland, air quotes tight end, University of Michigan.
And he's a heck of a receiving talent, huh? I think that's an appropriate way to put it. Really loved watching the route running. And he runs routes from all different spots. He certainly wins in line, flexing the slot, but you see him playing like legit wide receiver out on the perimeter and running, wrap ins and posts and whip routes. I mean, he's got a full bag of route running and ability to create separation. And he combines that with really good yards after catch skill. Mm-hmm. That I think, some of those traits that make him a very good route runner show up with his elusiveness post catch. And you combine that with really good, body control, confident hands, ball skills. And this is certainly the type of mismatch weapon you see a lot of teams wanting to have or having. You think about this next wave of tight ends that look like a Trey McBride and a Sam Laporta and hopefully a Dalton Kincaid. And it feels like this is very much in line with that type of player. But I think with him, the package of being athletically dynamic, route running, yards after catch, really just comfortable receiving the football. And he's a younger guy too. There's a really appealing package here if you're looking for that mismatch weapon for your offense.
Yeah, he will turn 21 years old on April 9th. Yeah. So he will be able to go out and celebrate on draft night when he gets his name called, which could be as early as Thursday night, right? When you consider some of the teens in the early 20s, a couple of AFC West teams that are looking for a joker skill player for their offense, to quote Sean Payton, or potentially the LA Chargers with a head coach that's probably very familiar with Colston Loveland and his skill set and how that could potentially help in getting bigger and more physical, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
A couple of destinations in the AFC West picking in the early 20s that, what happens with Travis Kelce? Does he retire? Right? Like, very compelling back 12 picks of the first round potential for Colston Loveland. And I think he's not really a player that I want to forecast playing with his hand in the dirt at the next level, because I think that plays away from a lot of what his strengths are. And I don't necessarily think that's a derogatory statement to make about him when you consider teams that run 11 that's really 12. And you mentioned a couple of names like a Dalton Kincaid has that kind of skill set, right? Another name that came to mind for me watching him was like a Zach Ertz type player as a pass catcher.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's baseline inline ability, although he has played less snaps as an inline player in each of the last 3 seasons consecutively. He's done that less and less and less and less. But don't get fooled just by this production profile, because the quarterback play was abysmal.
Yeah, who was that? Warren guy? Boy, he was tough to watch, Kyle Crabbs. That's the first time I watched Michigan's offense this year. Sitting down watching this tape, boy, I'll tell you, that was tough.
He got a lot of targets that were like never in history type balls.
But also really good opportunities to show his ability to adjust.
Yes.
Especially back against the grain.
You saw the on the back hip,
the
back shoulder throws when we're running sail routes and we're wide open and it pulls us all the way back into the field of play. All kinds of stuff like that really tested. And despite that, for Colston Loveland, he was credited with 2 drops this past year. So, if you put it relatively on his body, he was catching the football. And don't fall into the trap of the receiving profile for him, because I know that'll be a big question that exists with him.
The stats?
This year. Yeah.
Oh,
it's like, you got to draft a tight end that had less than 600 yards and average 10 yards per catch this year with an average depth of target of 7.1 yards. And this, if you look at the full body of work, it gives you a much clearer picture of, he's got almost 1,500 career receiving yards in 3 seasons for tight ends at the college level. It's a pretty sturdy amount.
You mentioned the inline dynamics of playing tight end and how they apply to Loveland. And look, you're not drafting this guy to come in and be a people mover on the edge and win as a blocker. I do appreciate his effort. I think he's a very intentional blocker. I think he tries hard to play with good technique, but obviously, doesn't necessarily have the functional strength or the mass to really be super effective in that capacity. And I think he's more of a positional guy, and you'd probably not be in love with him being your play side edge winner if that's what you're going to ask him to do. But
like, I'd hate him in Brian Daboll's offense.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
Like that 11 personnel group where the Daniel Bellinger type of role, like, that's apples to oranges.
Right.
Totally different player.
Right. I also think he contrasts really uniquely to a Tyler Warren. I think we have 2 very interesting tight end prospects, and they're both highly appealing receiving talents. But I think with a Tyler Warren, I get more of like a Tucker Kraft profile where it's just like, I can be physically dominant. With Loveland, I think you get more of a technician with how he is able to get open and win as a route runner, where Warren's just like, hey, I'm physically able to dominate you. So it's like a Tucker Kraft versus Trey McBride conversation, where I think they're just a little bit different. But I think they're going to both go high.
Can I piggyback off of that?
Yeah.
The data tracking over on True Media has Colston Loveland has forced 8 missed tackles in 3 seasons as a pretty respectable volume type player. I mean, he had 144 targets over the last 2 seasons, right? and he's caught 117 balls and forced 8 missed tackles. Tyler Warren this year forced 19 missed tackles this year alone.
Yeah.
And that I think you see that at the top of the route too, where Loveland with how he releases off the stem, how he gets to the top of the route, and how he kind of sets up space for himself, contrasting to Warren being the I'm going to get physical with you at the top of the route stem. It's a little bit, I know people want to point to the Gronkowski as the extreme example of that kind of player. And I'm not saying that's who Tyler Warren is, but like that's the style and brand to invoke another name that, well, maybe if you're a more casual fan that didn't scout Tucker Kraft coming out, or aren't a Green Bay Packers fan and aren't a fan of the greatest football team in the history of mankind.
Right.
You'd be a little bit more familiar with how Rob did it based off of how long he did it with that model of physicality.
We got a couple of dudes here at the top of this tight end class.
Yeah.
You mentioned the AFC West teams. I mean, would you blink if the Colts picked them at 14? You know, I think that there's a good opportunity for him to go middle of the first round, even, you know, plenty of destinations later on. That would make a lot of sense. So that's Colston Loveland. We got a big old people mover we're going to talk about here on the other side of it. Tyler Booker from Alabama. Folks, be sure to stick with us. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets with a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Tyler Booker, offensive guard, University of Alabama, listed at 6'0", 325. Depending on when and where you look at the roster, you may see a number that's bigger than that. He's certainly built like a big boy there in the middle or in the interior for the University of Alabama. Left with an additional year of eligibility at his disposal as a junior. And, man, just the displacement ability is what really stands out for Tyler Booker as far as whether he's in solo blocks that release vertically off the line of scrimmage, or he's blocking down blocks with angles to create wash and get guys down to create lanes for pullers and insert to kick inside, or we're doing double teams to try to climb up to linebackers. The punch ability and pass protection to offset upfield momentum from pass rushers. You name it, power's the word that comes to mind with Tyler Booker.
Yeah, displacement. You mentioned the ability to just like move people off the line of scrimmage, right? That's what he really brings, and it's fun to watch him, like torque and just fold them right over, man, like just all the time. Really highly impactful blocks that open a lot of space. And the anchor is really, really firm. Nobody's going to like go through him. And I think he plays with leverage for, a bigger guard, powerful strikes. I felt like I was watching the Baltimore Ravens starting left guard, just
right.
There's such a clear picture of who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed his intelligence and pass protection. I thought that was an underrated strength of his game. Just very natural ability to obviously handle what's on top of him, but adjust. Like there's a lot of moving parts with stunts in games and delayed pressures, sim pressures that are going to come at a pocket. And I thought his responses were really, really sound. So I thought he complemented the easy to identify power and how that shows up with, hey, this guy's got a really good football IQ that really looks comfortable to me adjusting on the fly when it comes to pass protection.
I think the fact that he's such a wide frame and the fact that I think he's a bigger player on the interior, I think that does him some favors, because I think when you do get into where he doesn't shine, like his gravitational pull as a blocker is because of the mass that he provides, as compared to the foot speed to kind of continue framing if his angles are stressed horizontally, or, if he's just authentically trying to do run throughs on his own concept and get up to the second level, right? More often than not, linebackers have to make the decision of, I'm going to run underneath of him. And, maybe just that width is enough where it runs me out of the play if I try to duck underneath, or I'm going to go over the top of him. And if I go over the top of them, it at times can force that linebacker to bubble a little bit too much. And then it sets up a cut back for the back to cut off of that second level flow. But he's not necessarily somebody for me, whether it's guys that are shaded on a shoulder that have first step quickness and can really get up the field, or as a player in space that has that kind of dynamic athleticism to be able to win at steeper angles.
Yeah, not going to confuse him with like nimble feet, right? He's going to have some soft edges against those twitchier pass rushers, and that's going to put a lot of stress on him to be able to stay square and not give up pressure. That's going to be a challenge for him. And I also thought, just a minor gripe from a technique perspective, is when he is drive blocking, make sure you have those hands leveraged and get your feet up under you, right? A couple of times where you just kind of saw him not sustain to the level that he needed to, because those feet just were a little behind and need to stay underneath them. So I think that's kind of a all-encompassing way of saying that, look, he just foot speed, lateral quickness, not really going to be the name of the game. I don't think you're going to ask him for longer pulls or really climbing and connecting with moving targets with consistency. So I don't know that he'll fit every scheme, but if you're going to run gap, you're going to run inside zone, I mean, you're going to feel really comfortable about his ability to pretty quickly come in there and add to the physicality of your offense and move bodies out of the way and really open up a lot for your run scheme.
It is worth mentioning he was credited with 7 penalties this year. I know he had at least one false start, I think, in each of the first 3 games of the season. So just little things like that, you get cleaned up. But he had 3 penalties combined in his first 2 seasons across 1,200 snaps.
I wonder how much of that's like just the very new offensive infrastructure, right? With
Kalen DeBoer coming in and after Nick Saban and that transition, I think that probably carries a lot of merit. As far as positional versatility,
nope.
Well, hold on now.
He played one game at left tackle, right? I didn't watch that game.
At left tackle.
Yeah.
He also took 167 snaps at right guard as a freshman.
Yeah.
But the other 1,763 have come at left. So
right.
Really, you're getting a left guard here.
Yeah.
Is what you're getting. Assigned with 30 total pressures across 978 pass blocking opportunities. So he's a pretty proficient pass protector in that regard. That's almost a full NFL season. I guess really 2 NFL seasons worth of pass protection opportunities with almost 1,000 snaps in pass protection. So he's a very high floor player. What do you make of some of the projections, especially with what you know about what some of the rest of this offensive line class looks like? I think that's where I struggle with Booker, who I have in my top 30 players. But I mean, the stratosphere of potential top 2 offensive linemen drafted in this class and taken off the board, especially with the positional value of being a guy that doesn't have any appeal to potentially play outside, I think is just a really fascinating subplot to this offensive line class.
Yeah, I think there's landmines throughout the draft, really starting at 10 for Chicago, where you could start to say, yeah, I guess I get it, or I guess Miami at 13, it would be another spot that you could talk yourself into. The Bengals at 17. But I think the sweet spot's probably later on, whether that is Baltimore at 27. Houston at 25 feels like certainly a good possibility there. Washington, if Kansas City, I mean, there's a world where they don't bring back Trey Smith or they don't bring back Joe Tooney, have to kind of take advantage of an opportunity to get out of that deal. I feel like he would make a lot of sense. So I'd like him a lot more in that range, but I think you got to acknowledge some of these landmines that exist really in that, 10, even into the teens.
Yeah. Just a quick tidbit. He went to IMG Academy as well. Played right tackle on the same line as who would go on to be his college teammate in J.C. Latham. Imagine playing high school ball.
Yeah.
And IMG rolls out Tyler Booker and J.C. Latham.
Right.
Same line.
Yeah.
A couple guys are going to get drafted real early when it's all said and done.
My brother played against DJ Humphreys in high school, and he played well against DJ Humphreys, but you also just knew it's like, boy, that guy's a little different than the rest of these kids out here.
Right.
Boy. That IMG, they got some dudes over there. So Tyler Booker, add him to the list. I think the comps here are easy to me. Like, I think the best one is Trey Smith. Like, you could talk yourself into that, but I've seen Osiris Torrance, which I totally get. I've seen John Simpson. I totally get that. I think painting the picture here is pretty straightforward. It's just a matter of how much.
I like Torrance more than Simpson, and Torrance is the name that I have down personally because I think his build. Simpson's a little bit more angular with his build, where the big broad shoulders and it kind of narrows and tapers as you get down. Where Torrance is built like a refrigerator, right?
Yeah.
And I think Booker's kind of built that same way with his body mass distribution a little bit more.
Yeah, similar strengths and weaknesses too. So
yeah.
All right, that's Tyler Booker. We'll keep it with the Crimson Tide. Jihad Campbell, defensive player. Talk about him next, folks. Be sure to stick with us. Football season may be over, but basketball is in full swing, and there's no better way to stay in the game than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you just pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. This week, I'm specifically looking at Jason Tatum for more than 29 points. The best part, PrizePicks is quick and easy. You can set your lineup in less than 60 seconds, and their fast and secure withdrawals mean I get my winnings in as little as 15 minutes. Plus, I love their weekly promos like Taco Tuesday, where you get discounted player projections for an even better value. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
Jihad Campbell, linebacker, University of Alabama. If you like big linebackers that have a great deal of length, and as a result of that, I think it can influence all elements of the position, whether that's attacking blockers that are trying to climb up and play on top of you, whether that's impacting throwing lanes and playing in zone coverage, whether that's potentially as a pressure player in some opportunities where you move them around. This is your guy in this year's class.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. And I went into this, and we had a text exchange last week where I'm like, is Jihad Campbell a linebacker or an edge? And you're like, it depends on the scheme. And so I was really kind of interested in figuring out where I was going to land. And I very comfortably land on as an off-ball linebacker for Jihad Campbell. I think there's some prototypes out there that make sense for him. But ultimately, I just think he's really athletic, and that length and his ability to play in coverage, and you want that guy that can affect throws in the middle of the field and, get depth, but also give you a chance to kind of squeeze those wrap-ins and, even carry some things down the seam. I think he's going to give you all of that. And I think that matters a ton. And I think he's a really good player in space that showed a lot of comfort with his ability to pursue and tackle. I liked all of that. And I didn't love the rush profile. Like, if you want to have him consistently rush, he can dip and rip and get around a corner, but there's not a whole lot in the bag there. And I didn't see as many. I wasn't exposed to a ton of rush reps, but every time I felt like it kind of looked the same, where I thought the more complete profile and the cleaner projection and seeing where there's a lot of value, I liked what I saw from him athletically in space. I think there's a lot of room to work, like instinctively, particularly as a run defender, but I like the idea of how he can really settle in as an off-ball linebacker. And I think about Tremaine Edmonds. I think about Derek Barnes, Zach Bond to an extent. I think all of those names. Is that your name? Yeah. You can kind of see how that's worked out. And those guys, even though there was conversations about edge rusher, like that's not where they found their homes.
Yeah, it's because the as you mentioned, just the depth of how you win in that regard is not, you only have so many pitches and things that you can show a tackle.
Yeah.
Right. So the fact that Campbell already has the second level comfort and playing in space comfort, I think is critical for him, as far as there are spots that you could tell me that Jihad Campbell ends up, and I'm probably not going to like the fit for him.
Yeah.
There are other spots where you could tell me he gets to work with this coach, or you've had these kinds of players have come through and played for this scheme before, and it's been successful, and you get really excited about what that looks like. But he's another young guy. He turns 21 in less than 2 weeks on the 24th. So he's young, 3-year player for Alabama. Only played a dozen snaps as a true freshman, but then 532 snaps in 2023, played almost 800 snaps this year. That included nearly a 50-50 split on run defense and coverage reps and opportunities. And then he had 100 opportunities to rush the passer, either as a second level blitz player or somebody who walked up and lined up on the edge. Joe, he has a career 7% missed tackle rate.
Yeah, it makes sense.
When you consider the length and the tackle radius, and don't let him square you up. You let him square you up, he gonna knock you
that Carson Beck tackle against Georgia. Was it this year? It had to be this year because I only watched this year's tape, where he was like, you felt like he was going to run and get the first down. And not that Carson Beck's like a dynamic player in space, but for him to take that angle and get in front of him and like stop him like a yard short. I don't know.
Yes.
It's a very specific play, but I was like, oh yeah, yeah, you could play in space a little bit.
Space athleticism and comfort as a tackler is a big time trait. Also went to IMG Academy, by the way. So he was there with
Tyler. What? I thought I had seen that. So when you started talking about that with Tyler Booker, I was like, man, did both of these dudes go there? Yeah. And yeah, they get the good football players there. What do you know what positions he played in high school?
Let me see.
I know that's a
bio here. Two-way talent, playing wide receiver and defensive end.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Rated as a 5-star talent. Pretty much had offers from every program in the country. He was originally committed to Clemson before decommitting and enrolling at Alabama as a member of their 2022 recruiting class.
You said that landing spot matters a lot for Jihad Campbell. I completely agree. What are some of those spots that get you excited?
Bay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm high on my list.
Yeah. Where you consider Todd Bowles and doing some of the Devin White stuff while actually having appeal as like an actual second level linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
So an opportunity like that, I think gets me very excited for what that can look like for him. Philadelphia, if they end up moving on from Zach Bond in free, like if Bond cashes in and they choose to prioritize if they want to bring back Milton Williams and Josh Sweat or some of these other expiring contracts that they have, there's a very clear, I think, proof of concept with a Zach Bond playing in that spot. He's been put in a couple of mock drafts that I've had in that role as well. I would also mention, and I don't think this is a need for this team, and they have a recently drafted young player in this spot, but if you told me he was drafted to do what I think Denver expected that Drew Sanders was going to provide
100%,
them,
100%.
like, holy cow, this is I think the top shelf A1 deluxe version of that kind of player.
Yeah, and Cody Barton winds up playing a ton for them. He's just kind of a cleanup guy. And Campbell just offers a lot more to me. I'd love you had the exact 3 spots that I would have led with those. I'm curious what you think about didn't Eberflus is going to Dallas as their coordinator, right? I do think about kind of how Tremaine Edmonds continued his story in Chicago and feel like that type of role would make sense. And I think Dallas has a reasonable need there as well that makes him appealing to me. So there's definitely spots, but I mean, if you're just going to ask him to be a traditional Mike linebacker, I think that's probably not really going to work out.
Right. And I'm sure he would be fine there, but I don't think it would be like a justification of if you're talking about a pick in the 20s.
Yeah.
What about if you came back around the horn for a team that's picking early if he falls out of the top 32? Do you have any teams that you like in that stratosphere between 33 and say 45 in the draft order? I don't have one off the top of my head. I'm just kind of thinking if he gets blockaded because he's a projecting as an off-ball linebacker and he doesn't go in the top 32.
Yeah, I mean that those destinations are not really there. Dallas is at 44.
New England
Broncos are 51. Yeah, maybe New England, but I think that's going to be fascinating to figure out. Like, what does Vrabel think of Bentley and Tavai? You know,
yeah,
because I think there's enough differentiation in the schemes that I don't know if that's going to be super clean. Yeah, I mean, Denver is 51. Tampa's at 53. Maybe a trade up from there.
I'd say if he's on the board for Miami with their second round pick, pairing him with Jordan Brooks, I think would give you a really exciting pairing of big time physical.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of size and athleticism.
Size and athleticism as your second level players.
Yeah, that'd be. Yeah, and I think specifically, I think that's a really good combination, especially with. I think what you have to deal with in Buffalo, right? I think with their condensed formations and bigger people and tight ends and
12 personnel stuff, and then the quarterback run game stacked on top of that, and what you're expecting New England's going to be with Vrabel and McDaniels coming in, and so there's some spots. I would predictively say the draft range then is probably like 19 to
50.
Yeah. We'll probably go in that stratosphere.
I feel it's going to be so true for so many guys this year. If they went 21, you wouldn't be surprised. If they went 43, you wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is where the value, I think, for this class. I have 16 first-round grades.
It's healthy.
And then you get out of 16. And then like 17 through I think 34. So then I have, was that 18?
I bet you I have more. I bet you I have around 20.
I've got that late 1, early 2 bucket that are like ideally the players that you're drafting in the first 8 picks on day 2. Like that's where I think the value is going to exist, but because you don't have all the first round grades, a lot of those guys are going to be gone. So then you're going to get into who your early, like your actual second round grades are. And I think that's where you get a real nice sweet spot in this year's class.
Every prospect we do, I like it more and more, my guy.
I tell you, people tell you it's a bad class. They're lying to you. Don't let them lie to you. It's a good draft class, just not in the traditional ways. That is going to do it for us here today on Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. We appreciate you guys, as always, for checking out the show. That's going to do it for this Prospect Spotlight. We will be back again tomorrow, and we are out of the season routine. So Joe and I need to talk here as soon as we hang up and figure out what we're talking about. You can come back and see us again tomorrow. Hope to see you then.